It was 11:15 p.m. on a rainy Wednesday night in Chicago when Katt Williams found himself standing at a bus stop on the south side, wondering how his evening had gone so wrong. His rental car had broken down 3 blocks away, his phone battery was dead, and his driver wasn't answering calls. The late-night comedy show he'd just finished at the Chicago theater felt like a lifetime ago. The bus stop was dimly lit by a flickering streetlight, and the plastic shelter provided minimal protection from the cold October drizzle. Katt pulled his jacket tighter and checked the bus schedule posted on the grimy glass. The next bus wasn't due for another 45 minutes. Great, he muttered to himself, settling onto the cold metal bench. From sold-out theater to bus stop philosopher in 30 minutes. He wasn't alone at the stop. An elderly black woman sat at the far end of the bench, her weathered hands clutching a worn purse and a plastic grocery bag. She'd been there when he arrived, staring quietly into the night, seemingly unbothered by the rain or the late hour. After about 10 minutes of silence, the woman spoke without turning to look at him. "You're that comedian, aren't you? Katt Williams?" "Yes, ma'am, I am." "How did you know?" "Heard your voice when you was complaining about that bus schedule. Plus, you got that way of standing like you own the world, even when you're soaking wet at a bus stop." She finally turned to look at him, and Katt could see intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "What you doing out here with the regular folks?" "Car broke down. Phone died. Just trying to get back to my hotel." World has a funny way of bringing you down to earth when you get too comfortable up in the clouds." Katt studied her more carefully. Despite being at a bus stop after 11 p.m. in the rain, there was a dignity about her that reminded him of his grandmother. "What about you, ma'am? Kind of late to be out here alone. Name's Dorothy Williams. No relation, I expect. And I'm out here because this is when I finish my shift at the hospital." "You work at the hospital?" 43 years next month. Started as a janitor when I was 19, worked my way up to head of environmental services. "That's a fancy way of saying I'm in charge of all the janitors now." She smiled slightly. "Retiring in 2 weeks. Congratulations. That's a long career. Long and good. Helped keep that place clean and safe for folks when they needed it most." Dorothy adjusted her purse strap. "What about you? Besides making people laugh, what do you really do?" The question caught Katt off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean anybody can get up on stage and tell jokes. But what do you do that matters? What do you do when nobody's watching and nobody's laughing?" Katt had been asked a lot of questions in interviews over the years, but none quite like this. "I try to help people when I can. Give back to communities, support families in need." "Try to help people," Dorothy repeated. "That's not. But do you actually know people who need help? Or do you just write checks and feel good about yourself?" What do you mean?" "I mean, when's the last time you sat down and really talked to somebody who's struggling? Not for a photo opportunity or a tax write-off, but just because they needed someone to listen." Before Katt could answer, another person approached the bus stop. It was a young man, maybe 25, wearing a fast food uniform and walking with a slight limp. He nodded politely to Dorothy and Katt before sitting down on the ground, leaning against the bus stop pole. "Evening, Mrs. Williams," the young man said. "Evening, Marcus. How was work tonight?" "Busy. Good tips, though. Might actually make rent this month." Marcus noticed Katt watching him. "Sorry, don't mean to interrupt your conversation." "You're not interrupting anything," Dorothy said. "Marcus, meet Katt Williams. He's a famous comedian." "Katt, this is Marcus Johnson. He works 3 jobs to support his daughter and his mother." "3 jobs?" Katt asked. Marcus nodded. "Days at the auto parts store, evenings at the restaurant, weekends doing delivery for a grocery app. My mom has diabetes and can't work anymore, and I got a 2-year-old daughter. What happened to your leg?" "Car accident 2 years ago. Driver didn't have insurance. I couldn't afford the physical therapy the doctor wanted. It's fine though, I can still work." Dorothy looked at Katt meaningfully. "Marcus here takes this bus every night after his restaurant shift. Been doing it for 3 years. Rain or shine, never complains, never misses work, never asks for handouts." As they talked, Katt began to understand what Dorothy had been getting at. Here was someone who genuinely needed help, not charity but opportunities, and he was sitting right there, not in some abstract story or foundation application. Marcus, what did you do before the accident? I was in school, actually, studying automotive engineering at the community college. Had to drop out when Mom got sick and I had the accident. Couldn't afford school and support everyone. Do you still want to finish? Every day. But between the jobs and taking care of my family, there's just no time or money for school. A bus approached. But it wasn't the one they were waiting for. As it passed without stopping, Dorothy continued the conversation. Tell him about your invention, Marcus. Marcus looked embarrassed. It's nothing fancy. Let him decide, that Dorothy insisted. I've been working on a design for a more efficient car battery system, Marcus explained reluctantly. Something that could help electric cars last longer and charge faster. I've got notebooks full of drawings and calculations, but I can't afford to patent it or build a prototype. Katt leaned forward. You invented something while working 3 jobs and taking care of your family? It's just an idea. Probably wouldn't work anyway. Have you shown it to anyone qualified to judge? Who would I show it to? I'm a guy who works at an auto parts store and serves burgers. Dorothy nodded approvingly at Katt. Now you're asking the right questions. As they continued waiting for their bus, more of Marcus's story emerged. He'd been on the dean's list before dropping out of school. His professors had encouraged him to pursue a full engineering degree. His invention wasn't just a random idea. It was based on solid engineering principles and months of research. Marcus, Katt said slowly, what if I told you that money wasn't an obstacle? What would you need to get back in school and pursue this invention? What do you mean? I mean, what if someone was willing to invest in your education and your idea? What would it take? Marcus looked suspicious. Why would anyone do that for me? Because maybe someone believes that good ideas and hard work should be rewarded, regardless of where they come from. Dorothy smiled. There you go. Now you're getting somewhere. Over the next hour, as they waited for the delayed bus, Katt learned more about Marcus than he'd learned about most people he'd known for years. Marcus wasn't just smart. He was innovative, determined, and had a clear vision for his future if given the chance. When the bus finally arrived, Katt made a decision. Marcus, I want you to come to my hotel tomorrow morning. Bring those notebooks, bring your research, and bring your daughter if you need to. We're going to figure out how to make this work. Mr. Williams, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. Dorothy here just taught me the difference between helping people and actually knowing the people you help. Consider this my education. Dorothy nodded approvingly as she climbed onto the bus. About time you figured that out. 6 months later, Marcus was back in school full-time, studying engineering on a scholarship that Katt had helped arrange. His invention had attracted the attention of several automotive companies, and he'd received his first patent with Katt's financial backing. But more than the money, what had changed Marcus's life was having someone believe in his potential. He'd gone from working 3 jobs just to survive to being courted by major corporations interested in his battery technology. A year after that bus stop conversation, Marcus graduated summa cum laude with his engineering degree. His battery design had been licensed by a major automotive manufacturer for a 7-figure deal. He'd bought a house for his mother and daughter and started a scholarship fund for other students who had to drop out of school for family reasons. Katt was there for the graduation ceremony, sitting next to Dorothy, who had become like a grandmother to Marcus's daughter. You know what the best part of this whole story is? Dorothy asked Katt as they watched Marcus accept his diploma. What's that? You learned something that night too. You learned the difference between being generous and being connected, between writing checks and changing lives. How do you mean? Before that night you probably helped a lot of people you never met. Now you help people you actually know, people whose stories you understand. That's when charity becomes investment, and investment becomes relationship. 3 years later, Marcus had started his own company, designing sustainable automotive technologies. He employed 12 people, including several other community college students he mentored personally. His company had developed 3 patented technologies and was working on projects with major car manufacturers. But every Wednesday night, Marcus still went to that same bus stop. Not because he needed to take the bus. He had a reliable car now, but because that's where he met other people who reminded him of who he used to be. I call it bus stop mentoring. Marcus explained to a reporter who was writing about his success story. Every week I sit at bus stops around the city and just talk to people. You'd be amazed how many brilliant ideas are sitting at bus stops, just waiting for someone to notice. Dorothy, now retired but still sharp as ever, had become the unofficial coordinator of the program. She'd identified dozens of people with untapped potential, connecting them with Marcus, Katt, and other successful professionals willing to invest in individual stories. The thing about bus stops, Dorothy explained to Katt during one of their regular coffee meetings, is that's where real life happens. That's where you meet people without their masks on, people who are just trying to get from where they are to where they need to be. And sometimes, Katt added, you realize that you're one of those people too. The bus stop mentoring program had grown into a non-profit organization with chapters in 8 cities. They'd helped over 200 people complete their education, start businesses, or develop their innovation. But they maintained the same principle Dorothy had taught Katt that rainy night. Get to know the people you're helping, understand their real stories, and invest in relationships, not just outcomes. 5 years after that first bus stop conversation, Katt was performing at a benefit show for the bus stop mentoring program. In the audience were Marcus, now a successful entrepreneur, Dorothy, still volunteering despite being in her 70s, and dozens of other people whose lives had been changed by the simple act of someone taking time to really listen. You know, Katt told the audience during his set, I thought I was having the worst night of my life when my car broke down and I ended up at that bus stop. Turns out it was one of the best nights of my life, because that's when I learned that the most important conversations happen when you're not trying to have important conversations. He paused and looked directly at Dorothy, who was sitting in the front row with Marcus and his daughter. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is being forced to slow down and notice the people who are right there with you, going through their own struggles, carrying their own dreams, because those people aren't just strangers waiting for a bus. They're teachers, inventors, entrepreneurs, and heroes. They just need someone to see them that way, because sometimes the journey you think you're taking turns out to be completely different from the one you actually need to be on. And sometimes the best destinations are the ones you discover while you're waiting for something else entirely.